Hi. So, I have no idea what I'm gonna do with this bullshit. I'll be honest. I decided, you know what? I recorded one thing today. I'm actually gonna record the thing that I have permission for and actually officially do a series. So, welcome to, I guess, the first podfic that I'm doing. Of Black Cats Are Bad Luck and So Are You, Kid by Holly. I am not reading all those numbers. I'm so sorry, Holly. This is chapter one, and I will be actually doing unique chapter art for each one. I actually did do fan art for this fic forever ago. Not even that long ago, but it feels like forever ago. So, you know, here we go. Midoriya had no fucking clue what happened. One moment he was fighting a villain, and the next he was thrown into a forest and trapped in a sea of his own clothes. He finally struggled out of them, unsure why he was so small and or his clothes were so big. In either case, he tripped on the collar of his hero suit and fell face first into the dirt below him. He sat up slowly, shaking his head. He blinked a few times and looked around. The world seemed less vibrant, more yellow and blues. He tried to reach a hand up to rub his face, but a black paw reached up in the corner of his vision instead. He jumped in surprise and found the paw slammed to the ground to help him steady himself. He then looked down at himself and his eyes widened. Somehow, he was a small cat. And not just any type of cat, but a black one. Pure black from nose to tail, as far as he could see. He tried to stand and walk, but found it to be a bit difficult. He groaned and pushed on, figuring out his new limbs slowly. He walked back and forth to his clothes and slowly tried to grab his panic button. He pressed it with his small paws and sat back down, waiting for help to arrive. The forest was very loud, though, especially now. He could hear the trees rustling, birds chirping and flapping about, a branch falling and hitting the ground, a dog sniffing and panting. Wait. He looked in the direction he heard the beast and hissed loudly. The dog jumped out from the bushes and charged at Izuku. The boy tried to summon one for all to protect himself, but it didn't respond. He couldn't feel it. The dog began to bark excitedly, teeth bashing together and slobber being thrown all around. And Izuku did the only thing he could think of. He turned and ran. The dog chased Izuku through the forest, right towards the other side of it. They jumped over logs, brambles, twigs, and a very angry weasel that hid again as soon as it heard the dog barking. And the dog didn't stop. Izuku couldn't keep running for much longer, though, and he looked around for something until and he saw a small yet soft-looking tree he could sink his claws into and climb. He jumped up the tree and quickly climbed it, slipping only 3 times. The dog, however, stood up on the tree and began to bark at Izuku, while the boy took refuge in the higher branches. He panted and watched as the dog growled and walked away into the city. Zuko took a breath and sat on the branch, laughing to himself with glee and exhaustion. After he was calmer, he took a breath and looked around, and he finally began to panic a little. He had no clue where he was now. The fight was across the forest, and he landed closer to the outer edge of the forest. So he would have to make his way back over to where his stuff was. But he wasn't going through the forest again. He made so many turns to get that dog off his back, and he wasn't risking getting lost in the forest. So he decided to go around. He sighed and jumped down from the tree, running into the city beside him. The concrete was familiar, but it didn't do good on his paws. It actually hurt, and sometimes small pebbles would get in between his toes and on his paw pads, and it would hurt. He was constantly getting them out, but he persisted. The forest went on for a while, and he would have to go around it. so he prepped himself for a long walk. He groaned, and a small growl escaped from his chest. He stopped and looked down at himself, suddenly exited over his new revelation. I mean, I mean, I was a cat, but this shit is cool. He felt like he could grin, but it wasn't possible in this form, so he settled for the best cracked grin he could manage. He began walking again, a bit more pep in his step, going over cat facts in his head. My paw pads and ankles can absorb shocks when I fall. Maybe I can figure out how cats purr while I'm in this form. Cats sleep for 14 hours a day. Cats sleep in the sun to help save metabolism. Cats can see in the dark. Cats are red-green colorblind. He looked around at that statement and confirmed this. The trees looked more yellow than green at the moment, and the stop sign by the road looked yellowish too. He padded on by it, continuing his journey, and finally the street turned and the forest stopped. He grinned and ran towards the corner. He was ready to go home. He skidded to a stop, only to remember to forest maybe longer than it was wide. But it was still wide, even for humans. He groaned, letting his head fall back before continuing onward, and the sky began to darken. He remembered the forecast saying rain, but it wasn't supposed to be for another hour. Maybe being a cat messed with his perception of time. Or maybe he had been passed out for a while. In any case, it simply meant he needed to hurry more. He picked up the pace. Trotting down the sidewalk now, he kept a faster pace than before, only slowing to pick pebbles out of his feet. He was panting by the time he made it to the other turn. He looked around and saw it. The destruction. The fight. He relaxed and padded over to it. He immediately saw his friend, Uraraka, pacing the area. He walked over to her and tried to speak, but it only came out as a meow. Meow. He cursed to himself, but it did get Uraraka's attention. She looked over at him and her eyes widened. She jumped back and stared at him with wide eyes. Shoo! Shoo! This was odd. He knew the girl loved cute things, and he was a cat, and cats were cute. So why was she acting like that? Did he have something on his face, or... He looked down at himself and remembered. He was a black cat, and Uraraka was very superstitious. She shooed him away more, and he tried to get her to understand. Please listen. It's me, Deku. Uraraka, it's me. Please listen. But all that came out was desperate sounding meows, and she shooed him more. Eventually a hero came over, and when he saw what she was doing, tried to help her, though for a different reason than superstition. Go on, kitty. It's not safe here. Shoo. Izuku meowed more desperately. Meow. No, please, it's me. I need help. Uraraka, just relax. But she did not. Eventually the other hero walked over and tried to pick Izuku up, but he was not having it. He hissed at the man and ran between his legs. Sorry, but no. Uraraka jumped away from him, and he sighed. He jumped into the brush of the forest, where he wouldn't be seen, but the other heroes. But he could still see. They all sighed and shrugged, walking away and glad the cat was gone. He sighed and flopped onto the ground, watching the heroes go by. Eventually they all left, Izuku assuming they had found his stuff by then, and deeming him missing. But the Emmets of first responders had to leave after a while. He kept trying to watch for his teacher, but the raven-haired man was nowhere to be seen. Izuku groaned in frustration and felt a prick on his tail. He turned around to look at the offender, who was a little sparrow that had gotten spooked by his movement, fluttering away. Izuku sighed and heaved himself up, the sky beginning to sprinkle. He supposed this was his luck. He padded out from the brush and around the area, the remaining heroes were in. The rain began to pick up, and Izuku looked around for anything familiar. Most of these heroes he knew, but didn't know him, at least not right now. But then he saw it. God bless the bright antenna of hair that Present Mike had. Izuku almost jumped for joy and ran over to the man. But when he got there, he also saw his teacher, Mr. Ozawa, hunched over and mumbling, threading his fingers through his raven hair and pulling it, all while Present Mike tried to calm and comfort him. I'm sure he's okay. The kid's tough. We don't know that, Hizashi. He could be anywhere. He could be dead. No, he wouldn't just die like that. He's stubborn. All we found were his clothes, and his panic button was pressed after he fell. It looked like someone messed with his clothes while they were on the ground. Anything could have happened. And now it's raining, and we could lose any sense or Shota. It'll be okay. Breathe. The raven-haired complied and took a deep breath. Zuko watched in wonder. These two knew each other? On first name basis? That was new information. Zuko stored this information for later. Zuko shook himself off and patted over. He meowed up at the two, and they both quickly looked down at him. President Mike looked perturbed, but his sensei just looked sad. Meow. President Mike leaned down and began to try and shoo Izuku away. But Izuku didn't budge. President Mike, it's me, Izuku. I'm right here, please. But still, all that was heard were desperate meows. The blonde sighed and reached down to pick him up. Come on, we don't need any more bad luck. I'll take you to a shelter, yeah. Zuko sighed at the man's hands and jumped through his legs. He looked up at his teacher and flung himself at the man, climbing up his black jumpsuit pants. Mitsurasawa was too stunned to do anything, and before President Mike could stand and turn around, hard to do in the rain, and all that goddamn leather, skill issue, Izuku had already clawed into his teacher's scarf. As he did, he immediately understood why Nezu was in here so much. It was warm and spacious. It seemed his teacher was like a furnace. He curled up into the white folds and hissed at the sudden hands that dug into the fabric, trying to find him. They suddenly stopped, and Izuku felt the man whose scarf he was hiding in sigh below him. He also felt the man speak up softly and gravelly. Don't worry about it. I think this is just the cat distribution system, a sign. God damn it, Sho. I'm keeping it. It's tiny and frail looking. Rude, but also he probably was a bit pathetic looking, as it was raining just beyond the white wall of warmth he was in. Zuki eventually heard his English teacher groan and respond moments later. Okay, it may help you calm down and have something else to do. And we were planning on getting another cat anyway. But we're taking it to the vet next week, and you're going home. You've been fighting since 3 p.m. Understood. God, Izuku hoped whatever this was wouldn't last that long. Izuku felt himself being jolted one last time and heard a door closing behind him. Before everything went still, he felt his teacher sigh, and suddenly there was a hand trying to reach in and grab him. He hissed at it and tried to back up, but he felt his teacher speak again, more than he heard it. Shh, it's okay. I gotta get you out of here. Zuko really did not want to leave. It was warm and safe, but he knew he shouldn't cause his teacher any more unnecessary stress, and try to let him know that he was okay, so he laid still. The man grabbed him and gently pulled him out of his scarf. Izuku blinked away the bright lights and back at his teacher, who was holding him by the scruff now, in front of his face. The man was studying Izuku, using both hands to prod at his stomach, sides, and back gently. Izuku was sure his teacher would love to do this even when he was human. Izuku huffed and flicked his tail at the man, and the raven-haired smirked just a bit. Normally his smile spooked Izuku, but this one felt soft, amused. Feisty thing, huh? Smart though. His teacher set Izuku in his arms and walked over to the bathroom. Izuku groaned, but still did not struggle. The raven-haired man set the cat onto the counter and grabbed some cat soap, turning on the water to warm it up. Izuku watched in annoyance, his tail flicking, but he did not move, understanding that his teacher thought he was a cat and needed to wash him because he thought he was a stray. Better to act as odd as possible so the man would see he was not a cat. His teacher plugged the water and began to fill it, pouring a little soap in it. The man stepped away from the oddly calm cat for a moment, and when he came back, Izuku had taken upon himself to get into the water. His teacher shook his head in bewilderment and walked over to scrub the black cat's fur. Izuku knew it was mostly clean, mainly from just being turned into a cat and the rain washing him off, but he still let his teacher do it, knowing he would just be causing unnecessarily stress if he didn't. The man quickly dried the boy off and set him down on the ground, Izuku shaking himself off. His sensei huffed in amusement and shook his head. You are an odd cat. Izuku looked up at the man and shrugged. The taller man didn't see it, though, as he was putting away the soap, and just laughed at himself. He picked him up again, carrying him to the kitchen and settling him down on the counter. He filled a small bowl up with wet kitten chow, which Izuku huffed at. If the man gave him kibble, he could use it to spell out his name or something. It would have been degrading, but useful. This is just straight up degrading. Izuku glared at the man, the and the man huffed in amusement, patting his head, speaking, I gotta get rid of it. Besides, it's wet food. You'll love it. Probably better than what you've eaten on the streets. And then he walked away, leaving Izuku to make the choice to either suck it up and succumb to his hunger, eating the wet food, or bother the man more to let him know who he was. Or try. It seemed his teacher was so distracted by something that he didn't pay close attention to the strange acting cat on his counter. Oh, right, because the thing he was looking for was right there, and he was so stressed about finding it, he couldn't look right in front of him. Azuka groaned and watched as his teacher came back into the kitchen and sat at the table, but with a laptop this time. His teacher immediately hunched over it and began to type on the device. Azuku sighed and ate a little of the food to satisfy his hunger and not worry his teacher any more, while also keeping most of his dignity. He jumped from the counter and onto the table, walking over to his teacher and pawing his arm for attention. He looked over at the small cat and smiled a little. Again, it was soft. Izuku shivered in fear, remembering the man's normal smile. His teacher snorted and patted the cat's head. Yeah, I've been told my smile is a bit disturbing sometimes. Sometimes? Zuko Meow gave his sensei the most disbelieving look he could, and the man snored again. Meow? You're such an expressive cat, and a sucker when you see one. Zuko tried to speak again, but it just came out as a meow. Meow. Because I know you. The man smiled and went back to typing. Izuku, curious, took a peek at what the man was working on. The cat's eyes widened when he saw the security footage of the area around the fight. Police records, his own vitals, everything. The man was searching for him. Izuku put his paw to the screen. His teacher stopped for a moment and looked down at him. What? Izuku took his paw and gestured the best he could to the screen and to himself. The scruffy man seemed to piece things together and made a soft "oh" noise and chuckled. Yeah, that's where you came from. Smart thing. No! Izuku yowled and flopped on his side. He loved his sensei, but God, he was oblivious. Did cats act like this? He wouldn't know himself, as his mother and Bakugo were allergic, and he never got one, nor ever got to interact with one. He glared at the wall in front of him, tail flicking and frustration building. He didn't stay long, but it was upsetting. Cats must be weird. He sighed, and his teacher pat his back. Sighed. How dramatic. Zuko huffed and glared at the man, who just snorted and rolled his eyes. Just then the keys he heard in the door, and his teacher stood, immediately walked over to it. Zuko looked at the screen, trying to find a picture of himself to hopefully make the man understand. He heard two voices now, and hurried, but only having paws for hands made using a mouse pad very difficult. He kept trying to navigate the screen, trying to find a picture of him to point to or something. He groaned as the mousepad recognized his and sometimes didn't, while also sometimes not going where he wanted. After a minute of trying, he felt himself get picked up. He was so focused on trying to get the damn laptop to work, he didn't hear people approaching. He went limp, cursing the laptop and trying not to get upset. Wow, he's kinda sweet. Smart thing, too. He got into the bath on his own. His teacher responded. Azuku recognized the first voice and immediately looked back at the man picking him up. His other teacher, President Mike, was holding him by his middle at an arm's length like he was an active bomb. His hair was disheveled, along with the rest of him. To put it simply, the man looked like shit. The English teacher looked at Izuku and seemed to get a little nervous. He's staring a lot. You're holding him like he's an active bomb. I would too. Izuku groaned in exasperation, and the man squeaked and set him down back on the table. Sorry, he hissed at me earlier. I wasn't sure. But he was also messing with your laptop. The man leaned down and looked at the laptop, stared for a moment before sighing and looking back up at the raven-haired. Izuku watched our conversation with interest. While it felt kinda invasive, it wasn't every day you went MLIA because you got turned into a cat and got adopted by your cat-loving teacher into his home and got to see his mysterious personal life. Izuku was a big gossip after all, and he loved new things to gossip about. Didn't I say not to work? Azashi, I can't just not do anything. The kid just disappeared. Shota, I know, but you're gonna wear yourself thin again. You need to be there for your other students too. The man sighed and rubbed his face. The blonde stood and watched over to him, resting his hand on his shoulder. How about this? I'll go take a shower, you order some takeout, and we'll go look more together for a while. The black-haired smiled and nodded, and the blonde rested his forehead against the other's, whispering something to the other, which made his shoulders relax. The blonde walked away and went to, presumably, shower. Azawa sighed and pulled out his phone, sitting back down at the table. Zuko felt bad for the man. He looked more stressed than normal. Zuko walked over to the man and jumped onto his lap, pushing his face into the man's hands. His teacher hummed and patted the cat's head absent-mindedly, but Zuko saw the man's shoulders relax again, so he took his win and lay down on the man. Before Zuko knew it, he was asleep, his teacher still petting his head. Izuku woke up again, to the ground beneath him shaking. He panicked and jumped, but forgetting he was not a human, but a cat, and where he was, he began to plummet to the floor. He meowed and landed hard on his face, sitting there for a moment, dazed. He felt a hand on his back and a deep voice speaking above him, amused and concerned. Izuku sat up and shook his head, looking back up at the man whose lap he just leapt from. His teacher was smiling down at him, relief crossing his face. His other teacher chuckling behind where the Raven man sat. Haired sat on the couch. Sorry, you two. If I'd known shaking you awake would have had that much of a reaction. Mr. Zawa shook his head and sighed. That's alright. I'm just glad the kiddo is okay. Izuku glared at the two and meowed grumpily. I was comfy, dang it! Wow! They both looked at him and snorted. His teacher picked the small black cat up and stood. Izuku sighed and let him, relaxing into his teacher's hold. Izawa yawned and pet the cat's fur. Sorry, must have fallen asleep after this one did. His teacher gestured to the cat in his arm, and Izuku meowed. The blonde smiled fondly and shook his head. It's all right, Sho. Do you want to go to sleep? The raven-haired shook his head and set the cat back down. I want to look around with you for like an hour. I can't do nothing, Zashi. Sho, it's okay. We will look. The blonde walked over and hugged Izuku's teacher, who shook and hugged back. Much to Izuku's surprise, his teacher shuddered at the blonde pat his back reassuringly. We will find him, Sho. The man just nodded. Izuku left them alone, as he felt he was seeing something that he probably shouldn't. And at this point, he needed to make a plan to let them know who he was. Hi, I'm a little out of breath because I just spoke for 3 minutes straight without taking a pause. Not recommended. I think I did that like 4 times where I just talked and didn't pause, aka take a breath. Or like I paused it sometimes with periods, but I didn't take a breath though. that's that's becoming my Achilles heel here. Anyway, I love this fic, so I made cat noises and hissed. I that is a thing I did. I I hissed on camera. Aren't you proud of me, guys? I'm turning into the cat I am. Oh my god. Anyways, this is chapter 1. I'm hoping to get chapter 2 recorded tomorrow. I'm probably gonna just do the artwork. I don't know. Maybe I'll be motivated enough in like an hour to do chapter 2, but I hope not, because I think I put myself out of breath. Anyway, have a good day.